This is Paul Nobles from ETPerform.com. I am sitting here with April Blackford and Dr. Spencer Nadolski. If you guys want to say hi in order, that would be great.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So we did have a couple questions lined up. We posted a video today that Spencer made, and kind of the gist of the video I think is sort of an interesting concept, and we've written it out in 3 series, but it may go a little bit longer. Spencer's doing a pretty good job of keeping the message relatively succinct, but the idea is something that I wanted to put out there for a while, and it basically goes like this, that most people don't really know how many calories they should be eating on a daily basis, especially highly active people like we deal with often, right? And so it sort of expands the things that you can do from an eating perspective. But even in that instance, you can waste your calories and get insufficient nutrition. So the argument that we're trying to make is that if you can eat mostly nutrient-dense foods, it does allow for some energy-dense foods. And in the first example, we used Ben & Jerry's ice cream as an example of an energy-dense food. And when you compared the meal of steak, broccoli, and baked fries with Ben & Jerry's compared to the McDonald's, it was like, wow, that's a lot of food compared to McDonald's. And then most people go, well, I don't eat McDonald's. Yeah, but Eat to Perform really fishes with a broad net. And so we do have some people that are eating McDonald's and sort of missing out on some of that nutritional equation, and that's what we're trying to get towards. But we're really kind of getting into with these videos, and as we start to go farther and farther down the road, is we're sort of pointing out that the more nutrients that you can push into your body and the higher calorie point that you could be at, now all of a sudden when you decide to cut and go to a deficit, all you really got to do is just take out the Ben & Jerry's, right? And if you take out the Ben & Jerry's for a short period of time, you'll see big results. But the problem is most people, and this is actually the 3rd video, so I'm sharing all this with you guys, most people are just eating the broccoli and the steak. And so they really don't have anywhere to go, and more often than not, they're exercising too extremely. And what we're trying to do is put a visual to people, that may be new, but also kind of people that are newer to the process, that are really fearful of adding food. And scientifically, when you look at it, the science says if you have X amount of muscle, you need to be eating this much to maintain that muscle mass and potentially add to your muscle mass, which is one of the reasons why when we start teaching people to eat an adequate amount of food, one of the first things we see is their lean muscle mass goes up 3 to 5 pounds. Well, is that some kind of magic that we did? No. You were artificially holding your muscle mass back by, one example that I always use is I had a client that I was talking to, and she was talking about how she was 18% at 142 pounds, and then we had her bod pod, and she just was like, oh, there's no way I'll ever get to 142 pounds. And I said, well, the reason why you'll never get to 142 pounds is that the last time you took a bod pod, you gained 10 pounds of muscle. And so wherever we start, we have to add 10 pounds to 142 pounds, because now you have more lean mass, and no one would want to give up their lean mass, because lean mass is obviously a great determinant for an upgraded metabolism. It's going to be a good determinant for longevity of life. So it's a positive thing, and I think there's a lot of people that are like, well, gosh, if I could only be, 119 pounds like I was when I was 22, or a guy, guys have the opposite point of view. They want, women want to be muscular at, a lower body point. Guys want to be super muscular like Klokov, like 275 pounds or something, and is whatever that is. Let's see. Annette is saying she cannot hear April or Dr. Spencer when they speak. Can you guys try and speak again?
Hello. I think it's probably because we haven't said anything.
Yeah. Can you hear us now? Yeah, we haven't said anything. Paul's been talking.
Yeah, that's kind of typical though, right?
Paul's a talker.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it works. So we talked about the video a little bit. Couple things going on. There was a question that came up in the forums that we can address. April, do you mind reading that off about the hatch squat?
Yeah, it was from Stephanie. She's a regular member in the forum. She had a question to Paul and was asking, how are you doing the hatch squat program? If you're doing it on your WOD days, are you adding any additional training? How are you fueling for it? And then she commented and said she's doing it on her WOD days before she CrossFits. She said she's had good success in the past, but her deadlift did suffer from it.
Yeah. I do not CrossFit afterwards. I mostly just try not to die. It's literally really, really hard. And now, there is an argument that could be made for CrossFitting afterwards. I don't believe that you should ever do that, truthfully. I'll just throw that out there. There are instances, okay, I'll stop short of saying that. If you're going to the CrossFit Games, as an example, you may want to consider 2-a-day type workouts. But if I was doing that, I would have my weight training maybe in the morning and my conditioning late that evening. And the reason why I would do that, and I heard it great, somebody was talking, they went to the CrossFit Endurance seminar. And for Spencer, and Spencer actually just got his level 1 this weekend or last weekend. He actually talked about that process. But at the CrossFit Endurance certification, they talked about WODs that have a heavy strength emphasis and then have a WOD afterwards, right? So you do like every minute on the minute for 10 minutes, and then you do a 15-minute WOD. Well, guess what happens? You're going to pick one, right? You're going to either pick to go aggressively after the strength, or you're going to go aggressively after the WOD and potentially be not as good at either. I can tell you that for my hatch squat program, I'm actually at a really high number. I know because I'm really struggling with it. I may have to go down. The multiplier is really high. I decided to push it a little bit on my back squat, and then I'm doing 90%, which is one of the recommendations that a lot of people make when you do these percentage-based workouts. I decided that for my back squat, because it's a back squat and a front squat in the same workout, and it's a lot of reps. Like for instance, it was 38 reps for the back squat. I think I worked up to. My back squat's not huge. My percentage that I'm working off of is 300. And so I think like week 6 or something, I do like a single for 295 or something of that nature. But it's just a ton of volume, and like my back squat, as an example, it's just wiping me out, and so that's why I kind of lowered the number on the front squats. But I'm not a fan of doing conditioning at a similar time, and so therefore I don't. On Wednesdays, I do it in open gym. I will sometimes do some skill work afterwards. I've not been doing it long enough to where, like, it's still wiping the hell out of me. And so basically on Wednesdays and Sundays, I do this work, and I don't do anything else except for nap, because it's really, really super hard on me. I mean, for some people, I don't know how good of athletes you are. I'm not a great athlete. I'm not a superstar CrossFit guy. I never lifted weights till 5 years ago. My deadlift's pretty good, and that's something that's kind of a strength. But here, I'm going to spend roughly about a year working on this weakness, which is sort of interesting when we talk about a lot of these questions that we're going to get later on, where people are going to ask, about kind of time-sensitive questions. And when you're myself or Spencer or April, and kind of fitness has been a priority for you for a while, and you've sort of changed that mentality a little bit, now all of a sudden you're sort of working towards 1-year goals and 5-year goals and things of this nature. Spencer, are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay.
You're talking about your goals. I think that's when you actually start enjoying it. It's when you relax, you eat the food, and you make the gains. That's when it becomes fun.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, I'm trying to finish this bodybuilding contest. I would really like to see if I could try to make it to regionals or something next year. That's like a long-term goal, and so if you make some mini goals in between there, yeah.
That would be awesome if you made it to regionals. You won the bodybuilding competition and then made it to regionals, and you could be a jack of all trades.
That would be a good jack of all trades thing. I don't know. There's some pretty tough people, but I think if I train hard enough, you're talking about once a day training. How many eat to perform people do 2-a-days type of stuff? Because I could foresee myself doing strength, just a nice good strength in the morning before I go to the clinic, then afterwards really hitting a good WOD if I, a couple times a week, getting a good aerobic base as well at some point.
Well, we have a group. Actually, Spencer's now part of the group. It's these WOD killers, mostly in the Northeast, and almost all of those people do 2-a-days at certain periods of time. Many of them work out 2-3 times, 2-3 hours a day. So how many eat to performers do it? We don't recommend it. In fact, it's sort of interesting because I was talking to Spencer and I was talking to Mike T. Nelson about the role of cortisol. I'm actually training for the Granite Games. Now, it's kind of funny to say that I'm training for the Granite Games because, like I mentioned, I'm not a phenomenal athlete, but I having the goal of training. It's sort of funny because when you start training for these types of things, like the CrossFit Open, I mean, that's a different thing. A lot of people are encouraged to do it. The reality is that it's sort of a peer pressure thing in your gym. The Granite Games is different. It's really kind of the WOD killers. You know what I mean? It's the best of the best. So you're competing against the best of the best. And so, I don't think, I may ever fare well against the best of the best, even, at 45 plus.
Mm-hmm.
I have my strengths, but, a friend of mine said it best, and I think it's really a great way to look at it, is that she enters these events not because she expects to win, but she never expected to win any 5Ks either that she entered.
Right.
And that's the way that I view it. I view it as this is just a fun thing. I mean, if you look at the 45 plus people from my gym, there's almost none. There's almost none of them that have joined into this, type of event. I think there's myself, there might be Jill, but the good majority of people are just kind of working out, and it's like, well, that's great, but if you're looking for something that kind of pushes you to get better, this is a great example of how you do that, and like I said, for myself, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize from a lot of these CrossFit Games athletes is that many of them don't WOD very much. Like I said, those guys that are working out 2-3 hours a day, often it's a strength component with some level of conditioning, but it's not a WOD.
Yeah.
It would be like rowing or some set of skills or something of that nature.
A good aerobic base, I think, is what I see as good programming with long, decently, moderately to long, like rowing sessions and airdyne type stuff. Plus the strength component.
Chad Wesley Smith from Juggernaut wrote an article, and he talked about getting specific in CrossFit, and he said, the thing that you need to get specific with is CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I do agree with him, but on the same note, I mean, I see programming of high-level coaches every day of my life, and what I see is that if Spencer has some strengths, they work with his strengths, but they also program in to really hammer on his weaknesses. And so I know for Spencer, as an example, he's going to want to work on his Olympic lifting. That's going to be the biggest bang for his buck. If he's going to make it to regionals, that's ultimately how he's going to make it to regionals, is by bringing his Olympic lifting up to where his powerlifting numbers and things of that nature. And so to finish the note, I think that people, they often feel like WODs are magic, and I'll fully admit to you, I don't get to eat near as much as I used to when I CrossFitted 6 days a week, because I'm not doing as much. Even though the hatch squat cycle really does kind of rip me apart, from a central nervous system, it's really not that much work, and so I can't eat an extreme amount, and so I tend to have my higher calorie days on my WOD days. I tend to make sure that I get an adequate amount of calories on my strength days, and then I use my rest days as a way of keeping at a lower calorie point. But to kind of finish that point, I was talking about it for a second there. One of the things I was talking to Spencer and Mike Nelson about was cortisol, and just how for a lot of CrossFitters that have kind of been struggling at a lower calorie point and things of this nature, I was able to go to Boston for the Northeast Regional last week, and I didn't work out for 4 days. I kept my meals in order. I used it as an opportunity to be a little bit more disciplined with my food, because I was really focused on the regional. I wasn't going through Boston and eating food and all that other type of stuff. So I looked at it as an opportunity to be disciplined, and came back, and was down, a couple pounds, and people go, well, your eating was obviously lower, and that's true. I think the bigger thing though was that I was doing a lot of low intensity work. I was walking everywhere. I was probably walking anywhere from 5 to 10 miles a day, just kind of, at the event and doing whatever. But also, it wasn't stress. It wasn't the same type of stress that a squat program or a CrossFit's going to put on you. And so it allows my body just to kind of relax. I was able to get in great sleep, as an example. And in general, I think that we sort of undervalue, inactive times, and that inactive times is a great way. More often than not, right? A lot of us don't WOD when we're on vacation, but you don't think to use that as an opportunity to get a little bit more aggressive with fat loss. And so I would suggest that people should try that occasionally. More often than not, though, people go on vacation, they eat a lot of food, and then they come back and then try and work it all off, in the gym. And, I think there some level of, getting away from that stress ends up being a plus. Do you guys want to get into that before we go into questions?
You didn't answer the question. She asked what you use to fuel for your squat program.
Well, so this weekend, you kind of caught me.
So you were avoiding the question.
No. No, let me tell you what I normally do. Normally on Mondays and Tuesdays are rest days. I do the 2 rest days together because I like to kind of get a little aggressive, but also kind of get that stress out of my system and things of that nature. And usually that 2 days makes a big difference for me. So on that Wednesday, I usually really go pretty big for food on that day because I squat that night. And so this is actually a big difference from the way that I used to eat because, I've talked a little bit about fasting and doing, kind of more skipping breakfast more than anything. But like on that Wednesday, as an example, I will tend to have like steak and eggs for breakfast. I'll probably have like maybe Chipotle with white rice for lunch, and then I'll drink about half of Vitargo, which is like the carb drink that I drink on occasion, really very occasionally though. I maybe only use it once or twice a week, but that is the day that I definitely do use it every single time, because I want to have as much energy going into that workout. Normally I would like to have some caffeine in that instance too. The only problem is that workout is at 6 p.m. and so sometimes it'll affect my sleep, so I tend to stay away from it. That makes it a little bit difficult to kind of get that high rep range, whereas normally if I had caffeine, I would be fine. This Sunday, though, it was the donut day, right? On Thursday or whatever, and so we couldn't go on that day, and so on Sunday my daughter had a sleepover, and so she wanted to go to this donut place, and there's no reason for me not to eat donuts, and so I ended up having donuts as my pre-workout for that day. I wouldn't necessarily recommend donuts. What now?
What flavor?
I just did cake. I like cake donuts with coffee. I'm like secretly like a 82-year-old woman.
So I assume that when you fueled it with donuts, then you had an awesome squat session.
Yeah, how was it?
I did and didn't. The problem with this week's squat sessions, and I'm really not trying to make any excuses or whatever, but it didn't really set up well, because I came back from Boston, because I hadn't worked out for 4 days. Normally my first day back would be on a Wednesday, right? Last week I decided to work out on a Tuesday, so my squat session on Wednesday was after a workout, which I usually like to have it be my first workout after a rest day. I want to be strength training, and then I'd like WODs to be after that. Last week it was in reverse, so that didn't really work out so well. My squat session was not phenomenal on Sunday. The highest rep range, you're supposed to go to 8. I only got to 5. So I re-racked the bar. I actually had to bail. I hate bailing. I'm in my garage, and so I don't like to do that. But I do have bumper plates, so it allows me to do that. But yeah, I was very hungry afterwards, and I ate like a lot of chicken, like a ton of chicken.
Mm.
So yeah, it was kind of a nicer day, so we ended up barbecuing. But fueling, like I said, uh, on my strength days, I try to be 100% as it relates to food and as it relates to a lot of time caffeine. You know, if I can, lift around noon. What are your thoughts on that, Spencer? Do you lift with caffeine much?
Oh, I pound the coffee. Um, the studies show around 400 500 milligrams of caffeine are good. So that's like 3 or 4 cups of maybe sometimes even 5 cups of coffee or a good couple of espressos. I even eat the coffee beans whole with a little bit of chocolate too. Sometimes that gets me going. But yeah, caffeine is a very very good ergonomic aid, and I recommend it.
Well, I do Vivarin, um, because that's what most people recommend to be able to kind of get, because you can kind of dehydrate related to the coffee and things of that nature. Um, and so usually people suggest powders or pills, and so that's why I often go to pills. But um, I still do have a cup of coffee. Actually, Sunday I didn't do caffeine. I don't know why I didn't. I wish I had. I don't tend to like to do caffeine um, when I haven't had enough food, and it was just kind of a weird thing just because I had the donuts and I didn't feel like eating, and I don't know. It didn't set up too well for me to do great, but I feel great about it because I started this program, and I'm really excited about it because it's high volume, and I need to do higher volume because it fits well with my CrossFit. I mean, do you have any thoughts about the powders or pills? Because that is one of the recommendations that they make from Examine. Spencer, was the medical editor or is the medical editor there.
Yeah, it used to we used to think that coffee dehydrated people and it had a diuretic effect, but there's just a recent, literally just in the past couple months, a study that came out that looked at the specific gravity of people's urine after drinking coffee or not, and it maybe it doesn't. It doesn't. So if you don't like coffee, you could drink a soda or obviously a diet soda, but or you just take the pill. Caffeine pills are really easy. There's pre-workout drinks that have it in there. Whatever form it is, just know what's in your supplement. I like to do it via espresso or coffee beans or coffee. So, but if you can do powder or pills, that's fine too.
So Ben actually had a question that I think is a really good question. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it because I know almost for certain my view is going to be different on it than yours. If you have an opportunity, can you discuss creatine, particularly how much an individual should take, and if there's any way to estimate how much water weight you can expect to gain? Well, it's sort of interesting related to water weight, and maybe Spencer could talk on that, but I think that the water weight, it sort of depends on, well, let me give you an example of what I think and what I've seen with clients and people that I work with. If you're lifting really heavy and you take creatine, it loads better. If, for instance, you're doing some type of creatine acts differently when you're doing endurance type stuff, so that can be an issue. I was actually talking to the CEO of Concrete, and he brought up a point that I don't think is really out there that much, and certainly I've not heard about it very much, is that the quality of creatine varies differently when you buy it as a manufacturer, and so sometimes when you're buying, he's like, well, you might get a 40% value, somebody else might be getting a 25% value, and so therefore the quality of the creatine makes a really big difference. I tend to load a good amount on my workout days. I take it with HMB from a company called Blancs, and the HMB in the Blancs has 5 grams of creatine, so I'll drink that. I tend to drink that with a carbohydrate drink. Even on days where I don't really feel like doing a whole lot of Vitargo, I will eat it with a banana because there does seem to be a little bit of an advantage to having it with carbohydrate. Some of that advantage is obviously related to insulin getting into your muscle, things of this nature. There's also some evidence related to like GLUT4, and so post tends to be somewhat favorable. I think in general, most of the recommendations, and I'll defer to Spencer in a little bit here, is that just take the creatine. It is whatever feels the most right, whether it's pre-workout, whether it's post-workout, just take it. It's going to be of benefit to you. I think that if you're lifting and you're lifting heavy, it's probably going to load a little bit better. If, as an example, you're just starting out and your loads are kind of low and it's really more of an endurance workout for you, I would load a lot lower. I take that HMB and creatine, and I also take 2 capsules of concrete. So on the days that I'm working out, ultimately end up being somewhere around 20 grams. It does kind of average though, because I really don't take as much creatine on any other day. I don't take that much on days that I WOD, and on days that I don't work out, I only take 1 scoop of the HMB and creatine, and that's only like 2.5 grams. Most people recommend 5 grams. One thing I would suggest to you is that you just play with the dosing. And the thing about dosing creatine is you'll almost always know if you're overdosing creatine because you will get diarrhea-like symptoms. And so if you see an advantage, then go for it. I'm at the point right now where I don't know that I necessarily see an advantage, but I definitely felt like I saw an advantage early on. And at this point, it's just kind of part of my routine. What are your thoughts on creatine, and what do you take, Spencer?
Yeah, so you'll gain probably 3 to 5 pounds, maybe 2 to 5 pounds of water weight at first, and actually that's part of its mechanism is helping some of your muscle cells swell up, which is thought to be in the one of the processes in hypertrophy or growth of your muscle. So that's actually a good thing. Like what Paul was saying is that it's really good in strength type of exercising. Endurance, not so much, because basically all it does is it's replenishing your ATP, those quick stores while you're doing that sets of your military or squats. It'll help in those sets, adding like 1 or 2 reps at the end of the set, as opposed to that long aerobic rowing session where you're just going nice and slow. It won't help in that type of stuff. But I take just regular creatine monohydrate. If you're just starting off, you can do 15 to 20 grams for a few weeks loading. But other than that, literally just 5 grams, a teaspoon a day. If you want to be super optimal, according to the data, you should probably take it after a workout with some sort of carbohydrate. But literally, the difference isn't that big of a deal. I take mine in the morning when I remember before I go to work in my I call it a lean latte. It's basically protein powder in my coffee, and I also add beta-alanine as well. But yeah, just very simply 5 grams a day after you load, or you don't even necessarily have to load, but it's pretty cheap, so you might as well. And you'll probably notice you're able to start doing a rep or two more on your sets that last more than like 6 reps or so. It's cheap, it's effective, it's safe, it's probably, if anything, good for you.
Well, and it's from a neurological standpoint, it's a huge advantage too, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of things going on with the brain, possibly helping in depression, possibly insulin sensitivity, like he was talking about with the muscles. You have these little sugar trucks, they're for the glucose transporters. Potentially, the creatine will help shuttle in glucose too. So lots of good effects and from something that's cheap and safe. So I recommend it.
Yeah, he's asking if you had to choose one, would you go with creatine or beta-alanine? I would go with both.
Yeah, if you have to choose one, I would go with creatine. It's the more well-studied of the two.
Yeah.
But they complement each other very well, especially if you're doing like CrossFit-like workouts where you have both an anaerobic and aerobic component. They will work very well. With the beta-alanine helping you buffer the lactic acid and helping you do even more reps afterwards as well.
Well, he's saying that he doesn't do endurance, he doesn't do CrossFit, he's strictly an Olympic weightlifter.
It'll help as well.
I would argue that beta-alanine is less effective for you, and so the creatine would be the thing that would give you the most benefit, especially as an Olympic weightlifter. If you're doing back squatting and doing heavy cleans and things of that nature, it will load. I mean, almost to the point. I mean, I hear what Spencer's saying, and I just think that what you're really trying to do is kind of bring the creatine, into your cell to make it do the work. And so oftentimes if it's sitting on the outside of the cell, you haven't really given it a significant reason to kind of push itself into there, right? And that's the only way to describe it. It's probably not the best description there is, but if you're Olympic weightlifting, you are doing significant enough work. Now, I know April's going to have an opinion on this because we haven't had a woman ask about it yet, but women tend to not want to hear what Spencer just said, which is 2 to 3 pounds of water. April, could you give the argument for women to take it?
No, I totally agree. I actually take the same amount the same type and the same amount that Spencer takes. I never loaded it, just 5 grams a day every day. I take it every morning whenever I remember because it's, if I take it post-workout, I probably wouldn't remember. And I typically carry maybe 3 pounds of water weight with it, but for me, the benefits outweigh the negatives. I've seen a difference in recovery. I cycled off of it whenever I went on vacation a couple weeks ago, and I just kind of felt, a little tired whenever I first initially started back working out. I felt a little more tired, fatigued. My muscles were a lot more sore. The water weight is really not, it's not like you blow up. It's just a different number on the scale. It's not, it's really not a big deal. I have seen that women tend to be more sensitive to the cheaper creatine than men. So I guess my gut's just kind of hard that I can take the cheap stuff.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why, and we're not sponsored by Concrete or anything like that, but they do have a women's specific product. And the nice thing about Concrete is that you can go to Amazon and read their reviews, and you will see a lot of women saying that they believe it loads a lot better for them, and there's just too many women saying it where you shouldn't view it as somewhat valid. And so I think if you're thinking you're having trouble loading, that would be an option for you. And we've seen, a lot of people have a similar type response. So I hope that answers your question, Ben, but I always love the creatine question because it's just such a no-brainer, and people tend to overthink it a lot, and I think the most important thing with creatine is that you just do the creatine, and whether you're doing it pre-workout, before, after you wake up, whatever, it tends to be a plus.
Would definitely do creatine over beta-alanine for just Olympic lifting, for sure.
Yeah, I think beta-alanine, I mean, like, I do recommend it for my high-end, like, games athletes and things of this nature. But even in that instance, I mean, none of them report that, they feel amazingly better related to beta-alanine.
You guys ever do baking soda or bicarbonate? Sodium bicarbonate? Do you guys ever do baking soda?
No.
It's supposed to be even more potent because it's directly a buffer, as opposed to beta-alanine, which has to be converted into the carnosine in the muscle to buffer the lactic acid. It causes a lot of upset stomachs, but it's some potent stuff if you do it right. I don't know.
Well, you should post that in our Wad Killer forum because those guys are up for anything, and they're a good test group. So Katie is asking, she does CrossFit approximately 4 times a week. That's the same as I do it. Well, I guess technically 2 strength and 2 CrossFit. With a strength component, it sounds like she's saying that her 4 days there's a strength component in there. Sometimes the WOD is 12 minutes or less. I'm wondering if those short WODs count as workout days for eating. I think they do. And let me give you the argument why I think that they actually count more than the 20 or 30-minute WODs. People discount the 8-minute WODs or the 12-minute WODs, and I would argue that they tend to be the more valuable ones because they're the ones that you go all out. The 20 to 30-minute WODs, you're naturally going to pace yourself, and you're not going to be at that high level. Let's see, she says strength component usually lasts approximately 30 minutes before the WOD. So what she's saying is that there is a strength component and then a 12-minute WOD. And so therefore, that is a hell of a workout, and so you would definitely view that as a workout day. I would make sure, I mean, the nice thing about doing a, when somebody says that they WOD 4 days a week, that tells me that some days they WOD 3 days a week. It could mean that they go the opposite way, but if you follow me here for a second, the one thing that we often suggest to people is that you consider more rest days as a way of getting more aggressive with calories. I actually was listening to this podcast, and it was a powerlifting gal, and she's a flexible dieter and things of this nature, and overall her message was pretty good. But one of the things that she suggested for people, rather than eating at a deficit, was to add in more HIIT training. Now, I don't know what her recommendation would be for CrossFitters, but it did sound like she would add in HIIT training, and I disagree with that completely. I think that, for most CrossFitters, they tend to be a little bit more alpha types, right? They're going to be more aggressive with the workouts. They're going to be more aggressive with the dieting, and it's really the exact opposite that they need to try. They need to try, if you're working out 4 days a week, fat loss is your goal, you've been able to keep your calorie point relatively higher, try, going to 3 days a week maybe, and then allowing for more recovery, less stress to the system, things of that nature, see what that does. Definitely making sure that on your rest days you're keeping your calorie point lower. In Spencer's video, he mentioned the total daily energy expenditure. When they talked about, in that thread, that the calorie points tend to be higher, And we do find that that's true, but we find that it's really a good fit for workout days. It's not a great fit for rest days. And so when you look at the calorie point, what you're going to do is you're going to go with that calorie point for the high days, and then you really, sometimes people can get good success, with 500 less. With women, that's often the case. For a lot of guys, they tend to have to go to about 800, less, because guys, their numbers might be 3,000, so they might have to go to 2,200. For a female, she might be 2,300. She might have to go to 1,800 on rest days. But that is what we find, is that those calculators tend to be a little bit higher, which corresponds real well to workout days, does not necessarily correspond great to rest days. And people tend to want to use them as an average, and I don't think they're good for averages. At least that's not what we've found. There are, certainly you can figure out a way to do an average, but the one thing that I like about the approach that we take with clients is that if you're fueling your workouts, you're eating the majority of your foods on the days that you're working out, you give yourself the better chance of adapting to that workout, maintaining your muscle mass, potentially gaining tissue, and then kind of keeping that fat in check, or actually getting more aggressive with fat. Like as an example, when like right now I'm kind of cutting, and so therefore I'm working out 4 days a week. I will probably go to wadding. I don't know. I'm really struggling with this, because as I used to like to wad a lot, and I every night at 8 o'clock I'm hitting that refresh button, and I want to see what the wad is, and I get excited about doing it. But the only problem is that I'm 45 years old, and my body really responds well to rest. And if I was being real honest with you, one of the reasons why I like to work out more is because I like to eat more, But my body responds better to more rest, and I can do better workouts with more rest, And I'm not constantly fatigued and things of this nature. But once I kind of reach my goal, I'm kind of like 2-3 pounds away from my goal right now. I will look at upping my calories and then adding that 5th day, because, like I said, I do like to work out. I like being in the gym. It's a good social atmosphere for me, and things of that nature. What are you guys' thoughts on? Well, we kind of got away from her initial, but the idea, of sort of discounting, strength. And then the WOD, and we talked a little bit about it earlier. Kind of, you almost have to pick in those scenarios, like which one you're going to be doing. And a lot of people, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but a lot of people tend to pick that WOD part, and they lay up on the strength component. Is and as a stereotype, I will say a lot of it tends to be the women. The women tend to be there, for the WOD part. At least that's the way it works out in my gym. Maybe.
I think if someone's goal is to get stronger and potentially try to add muscle, I think it's a great idea to do the strength first and then the WOD. There's a lot of members in the forum, CrossFitters, who their program is the exact same thing, where it's a 15, 30-minute session of strength, and there's a lot of rest times in between that. And then there's the WOD. So I think if strength is a focus, I think it's a good idea.
Was the question about calories?
I think she was asking if she still needed to eat her loading day calories on the days when she only does a 12-minute WOD.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're, like you said, if your goal is to get stronger, then I would, and just watch it. Watch what happens as you monitor, make a decision based on that. So I would start off doing that, and then at least, for the first couple of weeks, and see how it goes.
Well, and see, it's been interesting kind of cutting, because I hadn't done that for like 4 years. And so, much of the stuff we were talking about, but was based on my experience from the past and working with clients. But right now, as an example, I have 2 days together. I have Monday and Tuesdays. And so let me give you an example, Katie, of how you could work that in to your scenario and what it might look like. Because for myself, I try to go down 1 pound a week. And I don't always get there, but I like to see a little bit of progress. If I don't see a little bit of progress, it bugs me. I haven't actually had a scenario. I've been doing it for 10 weeks. I think there's only been 1 week that I was only down like about 0.6 of a pound. So every week that I've seen progress. This actually might be the week that I might struggle just because I saw such a good gain last week. But let me talk to you about the scenario where you might find that you overdid it a little bit. Okay? So you loaded your workout. You did strength training, 12-minute WOD. Monday is your rest day. So Tuesday, you check the scale, really not a whole lot of movement. You didn't really get super aggressive. This might be the opportunity on Tuesday to get a little bit even more aggressive. So like for instance, let's say that you were eating 2,500 calories, you moved down to 2,000 calories. Maybe on Tuesday you might want to eat 1,750. Let me explain to you why it's not that big of a deal getting aggressive on that day. You're not working out, and so therefore you have more freedom. I would suggest that you could even go as low as 1,500 calories on that Tuesday with one caveat. You're trying to get a goal. For females, that tends to be a little bit more open-ended than it is for males. Like guys tend to see a direct result. Not every guy, but for myself, if I follow this plan, I tend to see a result. Not everyone would. Women tend to hold water differently, so therefore your weight might not see a direct result, right? But the goal would be, if you go down to 1,500 calories as an example on Tuesday, you have to, on Wednesday, make sure that you are very aggressive at making sure that your WODs are fueled for that day, because you would have gone from, in this example, 2,500 to 1,500, and that really tax you. And so if you don't, kind of make sure that on Wednesday you're eating more appropriately, you're going to be working out at 60%, and the goal is to work out as close to 100% as you can. Does that make sense? Do you guys have opinions on that, April and Spencer?
Yeah, you want to maximize. Yeah, I agree.
I think usually after 2 aggressive days, the workout that you're going into is going to suck, especially if you get more aggressive on the second days. And I know typically for me, I typically tend to weigh more after my rest days. And I weigh less on a day or a day after my hard training days than I do on my rest days. I tend to hold more water on my rest days whenever I reduce calories versus the days that I eat more. So, and from the consensus in the forums and stuff, a lot of women are like that, where they tend to weigh more on their rest days versus, their training days when they're actually eating more.
Yeah, and that's why I think that a lot of the times we'll look at something and want a direct response. And, one thing that we've definitely figured out with having a large female population is that, the rules are a little different for women, and it tends to be more of an average than it is for men. Men will see a more direct response in a lot of instances. And so, kind of keep that in mind, because, even though you got aggressive, what April's saying, I would disagree with a little bit, because I think it's been my experience that, yeah, you can get aggressive. I mean, I'm not really talking that aggressive though. I'm talking about you're maybe 500 less on the first day. So the second day you got a little bit more aggressive. What I'm saying is if I work out at 6 p.m. on Wednesday night, um, I can eat enough food to get as close to 100%. And if you can do that, that is what I would suggest. I'm not saying that I can always get there, but I can mostly get there.
No,
You know?
I totally agree. I think the times that you train, are going to play a big factor. A lot of women tend to do early mornings too as well. If
Yeah.
if her workouts are early in the morning, it's most likely gonna suck a little bit. But if
Well,
it's later in the day, then
if your workout was early in the morning, though, I would do it differently, right? What I would do is um, I would have Sundays and Mondays, right? Like if she was working out Wednesday morning, I would have Sundays and Mondays be the days that I would get aggressive, and then on Tuesday night I would make sure to have a substantial meal with a good amount of carbs and get to be as close to 100% that morning. And I would absolutely have caffeine that morning because, as we keep talking about, that tends to be a plus for people. Let's see. Jennifer was asking, how important is it to change your protein and or carb intake when you change your regular workout time? Usual meal plan based on 6 a.m. workout, but tomorrow I have to go to a 7 p.m. class followed by a 6 a.m. on Wednesday. This is actually one of the things that I think is really good about metabolic flexibility. It allows you to be more flexible as it relates to the way that you eat. More often than not, people will tend to want to load in the evening because that's their biggest meal, and things of this nature. In the case of your 6 a.m. WODs, that would be my suggestion. You're trying to get in the majority of your carbohydrates in the night before. But in the case of the 7 p.m. class, I would probably say, let's see, usual meal plan based on 6 a.m. workout, but tomorrow I have to go to a 7 p.m. class. So for that 7 p.m. class, I would probably eat, I don't know if I would call it a meal as much as it might be a snack, but it would probably be like a sweet potato with bacon, snack. And, kind of an almost meal, but just gives you enough ready available energy. Make sure that you have a good substantial meal of mostly fats, proteins, and fibrous vegetables at lunch and breakfast, if that's what you do. You could have a little bit of carbohydrate with your lunch and then also have some carbohydrate snack. You could also have a drinkable carbohydrate before that 7 p.m. class. So those are all pluses. Now, she kind of makes an interesting point that she then works out at 6 a.m. the next morning. I would not expect that workout to be a very good workout, to be completely honest with you. I think you can try and load that workout at 7 p.m. Oftentimes working out, I don't feel like eating a huge meal. If you can eat a huge meal, that would be a good thing, and that might help you at 6 a.m. But the reality is you're working with less than a 12-hour window. And so you're working out twice within less than 12 hours. So I might take a look at which workout matters the most to me. So let me give you an example of what I mean. If I was wadding at 7 p.m., and my goal with wadding is more, conditioning, and I'm not really trying to get awesome at conditioning. I just want to keep it in my life because it's good for health, right? But at 6 a.m., I'm going to be lifting weights and I'm trying to get stronger. I would prioritize the 6 a.m. class more than I would the 7 p.m. class. So what I do in that scenario is I do 2/3 the weight of the RX. So in this case, that's the women's weight. So I do the women's weight if I'm not prioritizing that class in a small window like you're talking about, because that happens to me, as an example, on weekends, because on weekends the only classes available are early in the morning, and so I have to make an adjustment, and that's the adjustment that I make. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
I do. I totally agree with what you're saying in regards to, prioritizing your workouts. Some days I have schedule conflicts, like my daughter's getting ready to graduate from high school, and, there's things that she has to go to or things I have to attend, and I usually follow a three on, one off, two on, one off schedule for training, and some days, past couple of weeks, I can only do 4 days. Obviously I'm going to drop my arm day and I'm going to choose my deadlift day. I'm not going to skip my deadlifts and go in there to do arms. Deadlifts are more important to me than arms. So, I completely agree with what you're saying. Prioritize which workout is more important and which one you're going to gain the most out of, and then, go with that.
Yeah, in terms of fat loss, bang for your buck, deadlifts are going to be better for you than arms. Spencer, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would prioritize, whichever, the 7 p.m. versus the 6 a.m. And I would try to have a decent meal after that 7 p.m. workout.
If you can.
If you can. I mean,
I just can't.
A little bit you can make it a little bit lighter in terms of the type of food, but I would do that. And so your 6 a.m. would be a little bit better, and then, like you said, you could do some drinkable stuff in the morning.
Yeah. You don't have to if it doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I always remind people in these classes is that what we're trying to do is set you in a direction to try some things out, and then use the science lab to say, hey, I talked to Spencer, I talked to April, I talked to Paul, I tried that out, didn't really work out, and then get everybody else's opinion on the next better direction for you, because everybody's different, and that's why the science lab exists. We had a great question from Steve. This is going a little long. Actually, Spencer, it looks like you might have to go because you're a little bit later. April looks a little fresher. You guys are both welcome to leave if you want to. I'm going to try and finish off these questions. Steve's question was a good one, and it might take me 5 minutes or so to get to. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but it's Veronique or Veronica. But it's how are the carbs on rest days when you get aggressive with calories? I still keep carbs in on rest days because I feel like I get a better, for instance, let's say that I go super low carb on rest days. It may just be the releasing of water that is causing the advantage. So I don't feel like I get a true response on whether that's the best version of fat loss, right? So if I can keep my calories relatively low and my carbs, like for instance, on my workout days, my carbs tend to be around 300. So I want to keep I want to keep carbs in the equation. I just want them lower. So therefore, I go to about 150. Now, actually, April's kind of interesting because she'll tell you her carb split, and her carb split is higher than my carb split. And I have more muscle mass than she does. But it's just a matter of like insulin sensitivity and what works for you. So, April, can you talk a little bit about what you do?
Typically, on my workout days, my carbs are in the 325, 350 levels. And then on my rest days, I only like to drop down to 225, 250, usually in that range. Anything below that, and I'm just evil. I'm evil without carbs. I'm evil, and I get bloated, and I don't feel full. I'm just constantly hungry.
Well, give us an example of what fat looks like on those days.
My fats typically come from wild fish. I do peanut butter, almond butter. I do
No,
dark.
no, I mean amounts.
Oh, the amounts of fat. Typically, normally I'll usually keep my fats usually half a gram per pound of body weight. Sometimes a point 0.4 per pound of body weight. I
That would
typically
be the point four would be on the days that the carbs are higher. What I'm trying to explain is the process that you go through, because what I think a lot of people hear is um, I raise my carbs up on workout days. That's great. Well, if you don't lower your fats, oftentimes you'll end up overeating as a result. And so when your carbs are higher, you're going to want your fats to be a little bit lower, so therefore you're not overeating as a result. Does that describe it well, April?
yes, exactly. Normally I would do, slightly higher fats, protein on my rest days. I don't have big swings though for me. I don't do
Yeah.
big swings in a calorie difference, and I seem to do fairly well not doing the larger swings.
Which once again is a great strategy for maintenance and muscle building. But if your goal is fat loss and you're coming from an atmosphere where you've been overeating, then you may find some level of split works better for you. Rather than carb cycling, you might actually do benefit from some level of carb cycling with lower calories on your rest days.
Exactly. Yes.
So Steve asked, what about a cleanse, good or bad? We're not huge cleanse people. Problem with a cleanse is that it tends to be too extreme, and what ends up happening for a lot of people is they just end up putting the weight back on, often ends up in binging behavior. Now, is there an argument for it? I would argue there is a strong argument for it, but not in the way that you would think to do it. Okay? So this always gets me in trouble, but I have not eaten today at all, right? Well, actually, that's incorrect. I did have that kombucha, and then I had 30 grams of protein right before this class. Am I starving? Am I shaky? Am I, really super hungry? No. This is something that I'm kind of used to. This is sort of, my version of a cleanse, right? So the best way to describe what I do and why I do it is because it's convenient for me. It works, and it's a lot easier for me than having to constantly be worried about counting calories and trying to get to a deficit and things of this nature. And I just find that when I'm trying to cut, if I can eat more freely on my off days, and then use these days, that I get a better result. Here's the key, though. This is the big takeaway from this. When I leave here, I will have a steak, I will have a big sweet potato, and I will have a salad. I will have a substantial meal. Here's the problem with a lot of people in this scenario. They'll fast to excuse bad behavior. So the next meal that they have is going to be McDonald's, right? And so they go to McDonald's and have fries and a Big Mac, and really, there's not a whole lot of nutrition in there. So they find that they're hungry around 11 o'clock. They eat another bigger meal. That's really not the way to go. I find this works for me. Would this work for you? A lot of women find that it doesn't work for them. I often find that it doesn't work as well for women. My wife does some version of this on occasion. She doesn't tend to go as long as I do, which is pretty typical for women compared to men. But the difference between my wife and a lot of people, because a lot of people will often say, especially to females, that you know, it can be very dangerous. My experience is it's more dangerous for the people that are constantly dieting, that are looking for this as a way to go to a more extreme deficit. Okay? What I'm saying to you is 6 days out of the week, I'm eating 2,500 to 3,000 calories, and on 1 day a week, I might get a little bit more aggressive. Also notice that this is Monday, right? So what's tomorrow? Tomorrow's a rest day. If I find, as an example, that the scale is going in the right direction, I will eat normal tomorrow, and then I'll be set up a lot better for my workout on Wednesday, because like April said, it can affect you. And so these are sort of the things that I kind of play with a little bit. But in terms of cleanses, I prefer fasting over cleansing, because I believe that it just does a better job. But it really depends on your comfort level. If you're going to, literally, I've not thought about food at all. It's not been obsessive type thing. I'm not like, guys, we got to end this thing here quick because I got to go eat. It's not even remotely bothersome. I don't think I could sleep. I've never really tried it. It might be worth trying at some point. But I just don't feel like there's a need to get that aggressive. It's something that is comfortable for me. The majority of the days, I actually skip breakfast. I eat 2 bigger meals. Like I said, I normally go for anywhere from 25 to 3,000 calories. Right now, I'm at about 2,500 calories because, like I said, my workload's not as high. This is just something that I'm comfortable doing, and for the most part, I've seen good results doing it. I've seen a lot of people struggle with it, but oftentimes, like I said, people struggle with it when they are trying to get too aggressive. So if you're looking at a cleanse, I would say this might be something you could consider as an option. But once again, I stopped eating at 8 o'clock last night. I'm going to eat somewhere in the next hour, hour and a half. But when I eat, it will be a substantial meal. I'm not going to, try and exist on 500 calories and then waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and, going down to the kitchen and just snacking, because that's, that ends up setting up negative behavior, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do something similar on my rest days, where, I don't have to eat a pre-workout meal because I'm not going to the gym. You get busy with work, you get busy with business, doing stuff, and you're just not hungry. And then whenever I get hungry, I look and I'm like, well, it's 11 o'clock, I'm going to eat breakfast, or whatever. I think those times are fine. Exactly what you said is when you try to get too aggressive and you say, I'm not going to eat between this time and this time, but yet, an hour or two before you don't want to eat, you're hungry, then you need to eat. Then that's a problem.
Don't do that. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I've done this fasting thing for years. Okay, and you'll have so much more success if you don't put a time on it. Because I can't tell you how many times that I would like, oh gosh, I got to get to noon, or like in this instance, I got to get to 8 o'clock. Today has been really super comfortable, and I had a really hard day yesterday. My squat session was really super hard. I kind of thought that I might not be able to make it today, and I left that option open. Like if I was going to get like super hungry, one advantage that I have, that if you have this advantage, I would say it's a huge plus, is to take a nap. Oftentimes, if like you are underslept, as an example, on Sunday, sometimes it's a little harder for me to get to sleep because we stay up a little bit later on the weekends, and so we wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get my kids to school, things of this nature. So I'll take a little hour and a half nap, and usually that allows me to go a little bit further. If I had stayed at 6 o'clock, absolutely no shot that I would have been able to last the whole day, because when you are underslept, obviously your body needs food to recover, and so because I was able to get that nap in, it allowed me to go a little bit further. So if you want to talk about that, April, James, and myself, we're all, we've all been down the road with fasting. I actually, haven't really fasted. I don't really consider skipping breakfast a fast, and I've never really considered it that. But some people do. I just think the problem with those scenarios is that people go, well, I do a 16-hour fast or I do a 14-hour fast, and they put these hard rules on it. And frankly, there's no advantage to go that extra hour. If you find that your hands are getting cold and your extremities are getting cold and things of that nature, you're probably going too far, and there really is no advantage as it relates to fat loss over time. You're much better off with some level of calorie approach. And oh, by the way, this is a calorie approach. I mean, let's be honest. I'm saying, I'm going to eat more freely at other times, and I'm going to use this as a way to kind of keep my calorie average in check. And there's arguments for and against it, but I'm saying as someone that is looking at a cleanse, this would be an option I would consider as being better than a cleanse. So something to think about. I would not ever do it on a workout day. That's just, I think it just takes away too much. And I think you'll end up being hungry as a result. And I'm speaking from a little bit of experience on that one. That's an experiment that I did, tried it, didn't work, moved on. So, well, I hope that helped you, Steve. I hope you're still around. I know we're going to end up getting a lot of questions. April probably loved the fact that we addressed that question. And so it'll make the times in the forums a little bit interesting. But I do think fasting is a viable option as long as you are keeping it away from your workouts and you're viewing it open-ended and not in this real strict type of way. And it is an option for some people. You do sometimes need to adjust to it, and sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable. But I often wonder if it would have been uncomfortable if I did it the way that I do it now, as opposed to the restrictive way I might have done it in the past. And doing it on workout days and things of this nature. And so, you live and learn, and hopefully you can optimize those things. And heck, 3 months from now, I may figure out, hey, this fasting thing was kind of annoying. I'm too hungry too often, so I'm not going to do it. Then I'll just move on to another approach that works. And I think that's the key for everybody, is you just keep moving from approach to approach to approach. And sometimes you'll get some success with one approach. You'll stop getting that success, so it might be time to move on to another approach. And that's kind of what we're here to help you do. So on that note, we'll end. We went a little bit longer than normal. Thanks, April, for staying around. This is kind of late for April. And I appreciate everybody being here, and I'll talk to you later.
Good night, everybody.
All righty. Bye-bye.